Recall that it is now a law that any chief executive, especially the president, would have to send his list on, nominee list for ministers to the Senate within 60 days of being sworn in. So that's why it says 4 days to go. So let's see how this pans out. From there, let's go to Nigeria News Direct. Ministerial appointments, that's the focus here too. 4 days to deadline. Nigerians await Tinubu's nominees as senators, reps prepare to embark on annual vacation. 4 days to deadline. Nigerians await Tinubu's nominees. Okay, that's what the News Direct has. And from there, let's go to this Nigeria. Okay, PPC, that's the Presidential Election Petition Court. APC, a Labour Party, PDP, trade words over written addresses. The president's lawyer says Atiku will be laboring in vain. And Tinubu Shetima response, shocking, says Obi, a tribunal should ensure justice is delivered. This is what you see on the front page of this Nigeria. And then let's get to the Nation newspaper. APC NEC to ratify Ganduje Basiru as chairman secretary. Party's caucus endorses choices. Okay, you see that on the front page of the Nation newspaper. APC NEC to ratify Ganduje Basiru as chairman secretary. Okay, the Guardian newspaper is next. Guardian says 105 Mondays of sit at home. 105 Mondays of sit at home. Southeast loses 7.6 trillion naira productivity investments to agitation in 2 years. Southeast loses 7.6 trillion naira productivity investments to agitation in 2 years. Ex-governors fail as successors struggle with law and order. Okay, we just spoke on this now with the senior special assistant to the Enugu State Governor on social media, Dr. Ruben Onishi, and who were having discussions around this issue. Now let's look at Daily Times. State of federal roads is the focus here. Governor spits fire on the federal government. Governor spits fire on the federal government. I recall you must have seen the viral video from Benin where the convoy of the governor was alleged to have been stuck in some flood waters, and he has led to a lot of back and forth where the governor was said to have released, a statement saying that Edo State has been abandoned by the federal government. So it's been going viral, it's been going around what's going on there. That video has been all over social media. All right, that's Daily Times, State of the Federal Roads. Governor spits fire on federal government. Of course, we have these issues of roads across so many states of the Federation. Kemi.
Right. Interesting splash of stories so far. Let's check out Daily Trust now. And it's leading with this report on what it calls shrinking reserves, with concerns set to mount over President Tinubu's directives on grains. Of course, you'd recall that the federal government has since declared a state of emergency on the issue of food security, and this has been garnering a lot of interest across quarters. And the Daily Trust adds that strategic reserves have dropped to 150,000 tons. It says this information is according to sources and based on certain WFP, that's the World Food Program, and the Food Association of Nigeria report, 24.8 million Nigerians are at risk of acute hunger. That's all on Daily Trust. On Abuja Inquirer is this report on the FCTA, that's the Federal Capital Territory Administration Authority, that is unveiling food subsidy. Of course, these are some of the palliatives that many Nigerians or groups, individuals that is, are making in the wake of the fuel subsidy removal. Abuja Inquirer adds that the FCTA will also subsidize grains and fertilizers to cushion the impact of the fuel subsidy removal. On national economy, it calls this big story minimum wage, maximum rage through the eyes of the Nigerian workers, with households battling skyrocketing cost of goods as salaries remain static. Of course, this in the wake of the National Economic Council meeting of last week, where so many announcements were made, of course, still around cushioning the impact of the fuel subsidy removal for all workers across the public and private sector. On Daily Independent is this report on dollar shortage widening official and black market rates gaps, with the CBN's willing buyer, willing seller plan, which has failed. That's according to analysts. Daily Independent there talking about dollar shortage, persistent dollar shortage in Nigeria, which is widening official and black market rates gap. On Business Day is Nigeria's new infrastructure fund faces legal hurdle. Nigeria's new infrastructure fund facing legal hurdle. You get all the details on Business Day. And quickly on The Punch is workers kick as governors borrow 2.2 trillion naira from banks. Governors' borrowing spree has left states poorer. Pensioners and workers lament. Governors borrowing 2.2 trillion naira from banks. That's according to The Punch, leaving pensioners and workers at the brunt of this policy. And finally is The Leadership. NAS spends 53.7 billion naira on cars for lawmakers in 12 years, with the civil society groups saying we cannot continue this way and that the spending on these cars are unjustifiable and unsustainable. That's all on The Leadership. And from me, Mike.
Okay. Now let's take a look at this story that will interest a lot of Nigerians. People have been making comments around the issue of ministerial list. We hear that about four names were replaced. You know, how that is true, we don't know, because no one has seen the list, apart from those who are putting it together. But the point there is, it is now an issue of the law. You have to ensure that the list, your ministerial list and all of that is tidied up within 60 days of the takeover of the new government. And especially being the passing of Tinubu, a lot of persons actually had expected that the names of these nominees would have been out before now. In fact, a day or two after the swearing in, Nigerians were expecting that, well, they're going to see names of new ministers or the cabinet. We didn't see that, but right now the government is running against time, as it is.
Absolutely.
4 days to go, and we're still waiting.
Absolutely. I want to believe that this really should have been done and dusted long before now. But insiders are saying perhaps the issues within the ruling party may have had an impact on the delay so far. According to some sources, the list has since been ready. There was talk about the list already being with the DSS weeks before now. And at a point, people were even speculating that perhaps the National Assembly had gotten the list of nominees, only for unconfirmed sources to add that the list hasn't arrived, and so the president is said to be making some last-minute touches, here and there. We don't know for certain. The government has not exactly, told us, but it has said it will definitely meet up with the deadline. And of course, as we all know, a lot can happen in a matter of days. Of course. Especially when
in a matter of hours.
In a matter of hours, and 4 days is short, but it's also a long time. But then we hope that the speculations will be rested, that the government would have talked to Nigerians, because many people like you started off on this discussion. Many people have really been, looking out to know who and who and who. Of course, there's been talks about square pegs in square holes, the president being spoiled for choices. He's a super technocrat. He's Ashiwaju. He's not Ashiwaju for nothing. There are so many people around him who eminently fit, the roles that need to be filled. But, then consultations are in order at this time now, and so many other considerations that he would definitely, have to make to be sure that he makes the right decision. So, yes, we hope that before long, all this will be done and sorted out.
The other issue that party members have been looking at is the issue of getting technocrats to fit into, like you said, square pegs in square holes, or round peg in round holes, as you may put it. But others are talking about also the issue of compensating people who have worked so hard for the party to win election in the first place. So how do we balance all of this? Who is a technocrat? Who is, all of that question is still in the mix. But I believe that the president knows he has a way around how to work with people, politicians, how to work with professionals and people who are core professionals in whatever field. So I only just imagine the pressure he will be under from party members, from people, from citizens, from institutions regarding, in fact, I think in one of the states in the North Central, youths have started rallying, saying that this is the person, they were tipping someone to become the Minister of Sports, and so on. So the point there is you have all of this kind of pressures here and there. How the president is going to melt all these things into one to come up with that list is the issue that Nigerians are waiting to see.
It is, and well, it remains to be seen. But then I remember, I don't know whether it was you and I that spoke to, a particular guest, in the past recently, and he gave a rather interesting insight, saying that, okay, so all this talk about, technocrats, as we seem to forget that politicians come from, various, walks of life. Many of them are professionals. Many of them are successful in their own field. So when we say that Nigeria needs seasoned technocrats, why are we, shutting out the politicians? Because many of them wear several caps, several fitting caps. They've earned their names within politics, but then they've also earned their names, elsewhere in their chosen field. So if the president, he can just choose to, kill one bird or kill two birds with one stone, Of course, there's so many choices now. There are people that should be compensated, but then he has said, don't envy me. I understand the pressure I'm under. I know what I want. I have my eyes, on the ball. I'm not distracted. But obviously, these considerations, no one, and I'm sure he of all people would know that, there has to be so many considerations. And again, the buck stops at his table. So eventually, whoever he brings out will be assessed through him, through the president. So I guess he's watching out for that. But, obviously, that hasn't dampened the intense scrutiny or the intense expectations that Nigerians, have on the president, especially at this time now, because of course it's the next big thing. So many things have happened, the fuel subsidy removal, since the inauguration that is, so many things have happened. And the next big thing is, the lineup of ministers, when they get to be grilled, let's know who will go to what, eventually. And okay, I remember that there has also been calls that should they just submit the names of the ministers or put the designations or their portfolios against them so we know what to expect. And, perhaps that will also help in more heated arguments or more spirited arguments back and forth from the lawmakers.
Yeah, when it comes to attaching the portfolios to the names, there is no rule in that regard. So it is just the prerogative of the president. If he decides to attach to say, okay, Kemi Folademo, Minister of Women Affairs or Minister of Education or Minister of Information, whatever the thing is, it is totally his prerogative. So there is no law to compel the president, except if the National Assembly, in addition to some of the rules, decide to, add that as an addendum to say, okay, going forward, whatever list is coming from...
Within the 60 days.
Exactly,
yes.
within that 60 days, whatever names are coming from the president or even the governors, because it's becoming a law in Nigeria now that portfolios should be attached to whomever that has been designated to be or to take whatever, so that they can scrutinize the person in that particular area, So we wait to see how that is. But I think the reason why there is a desperation is because of the realities Nigerians are facing right now. Because one expects that it is when the cabinet is in place, that is when government originally takes off from. The president has been making a lot of impact when it comes to policies and so on. We're seeing some are biting harder on Nigerians regarding, fuel subsidy and increased, the financial issues, the naira, the dollar issues, and up and down. But however, it is said that these things are important. These are initial things, initial reactions that Nigerians are going to see when this kind of policies come on board. But it is for the greater good from the explanations that the presidency has given. But Nigerians want to see that change, that thing, that Nigerians want to see. Inflation rate dropping, unemployment rate dropping, poverty rate dropping, and then, productivity rising, exportation rising, all of those kind of things. That's what Nigerians want to see right now. And it is the ministers that will drive all of those in different sectors. So we'll wait to see how all of these things pan out. 4 days to go. And as it is, yeah, exactly.
I was saying less than.
4 days to go.
Right.
But I wonder what it's going to look like in the eyes of the law, Kemi. You are the lawyer here. But I'm not putting you on the spot, though. But the point there is, I wonder what it's going to look like if somehow that 4 days comes and nothing is still there. I wonder what kind of scenario it's going to create. It
will be interesting, Mike, especially now that this is the first time that this is being tested, and the law, so to speak, seemed to fit with with the sentiments of many Nigerians that this should be the norm. We shouldn't have to wait on the president or the governor, as the case may be now, before the list is out. We shouldn't have to wait with bated breath. This is something that even upon inauguration, the next thing that should follow should be the list of ministers who will aid the president or the leader's mandate. So that law, we wait to see what would happen now, because it was a directive, or it was a decision by the National Assembly, by the lawmakers at the time, and we wait to see whether this will be tested. But the government has said, the incumbent administration has said it is going to meet up with the time, and this will not be the first time that deadlines of this magnitude would be presented to even INEC. INEC had stipulated lineup of things to do that all parties needed to work with, and so far we had the parties complying, so to speak. So it's something. It's a good point that you make, but I don't see how the government will not deliver on this. And if it's just in case we have that, it will be many people will be keen to see whether anyone would be willing to test the waters. But of course, rights groups are obviously monitoring, and it won't be out of place for them to go to the courts to ask for the courts to give interpretation to what the lawmakers have done, whether it's binding on the president. But it will not be out of order, like I said, for activists or interested Nigerians now with a valid level of interference, so to speak, to go to the court and seek interpretation or to give judicial meaning to this if it becomes an issue.
All right. Well, we'll wait to see, but certainly we know that the government will abide by that. We're only just trying to create that scenario, just
worst case
scenario where the executive doesn't meet that aspect of things. I believe the National Assembly that even made the law would even come to say, executive, you're not supposed to do this, and then the judiciary would also seek interpretation. In fact, trust the Nigerian civil society organizations, to approach the courts to say, come, this thing, because right now, in fact, what the media is doing with some of the headlines like this is also to, in a subtle way, put pressure on the government. Counting down, time is going. You have 4 days now. Do whatever you have to do within the time. And, so it reminds the government that you don't have all the time. You need to do whatever you need to do right now. And also seeing that for Tinubu as a person, like we said earlier, a lot of Nigerians expected that after the election, even after the swearing in, that the ministers, the list would have been out, and then everything moved on. But sometimes it's a whole lot of work, trying to make more consultation with people, with Nigerians, and the dynamics of the country, different people, different places. You're trying to consider national interest. You're trying to consider, those who worked for you, everything into the entire mix. But one other thing Nigerians are looking forward to now is the issue of key ministries, what some people call key ministries. Some people see some ministries as the driver of the government. The Ministry of Petroleum is one of it. The Ministry of Finance is one of it. Ministry of Works is another one. And then maybe education. There are so many. There's several ministries that are seen as key because in the area of education, in the area of health, those areas are places Nigerians want to see drastic change. In fact, they want to see magic.
Especially in the areas of, the possibilities, the expectations that with the fuel subsidy removal, so many social welfare programs will launch and will be active, and Nigerians will get to, partake in. So there's so many. Even before you raised up this point, as I was thinking, gone are the days, I reckon, that some ministries would be said to be, more juicier or more hectic, because it's a whole, big, so much to do, so many ministries. I don't think there should be any ministry that one would say, oh, okay, I get to have it easier than some. And then another point I wanted to make, quickly was, I think politicians, in reality now, politicians will want to explore, use up the entire 60 days in this case. Recall the placeholder innovation or the revolution that happened, during the electionary period.
Let me put you on hold. You continue this issue. Let's go on a short break now. We'll be right back. Stay with us on TVC Breakfast. Right, you're watching TVC Breakfast. We are just looking at some of the issues around. Before we went on the break, we were looking at the headlines on the Nigerian News Direct and the Blueprint newspaper that talked about the countdown to the deadline for the submission of ministerial nominees by the president to the National Assembly. It's just about 4 days to go, and we're looking at this. Kemi, we're making a point on the placeholder issue. Before we go into the next issue, I'd like us to talk about.
Right, we were talking about, INEC's calendar during the electioneering period before the February and March general election. Of course, with the emergence of the flag bearers of the party, there was a period stipulated by INEC for presidential flag bearers to bring forth their running mates, and time was running out. I recall APC, was it PDP as well, and some other politicians or candidates came up with placeholders in place of their running mates, so as to meet up with the deadline. Yeah. Of course, people raised an eyebrow over it, but it wasn't an issue eventually. And of course, at the end, we saw the placeholders, giving way for the real running mates to emerge. So politicians, in reality, I was saying, would want to, exhaust all the, in this case now, the 60 days. Why do I have to do 30 days when I still have 60 days now, the whole of 60 days to make widespread consultations and make sure that I am indeed satisfied? So if the last second before 60 days is still their prerogative, to exhaust or to, come forth, earlier, but it's still 60 days.
Yeah, but sometimes the longer you wait, the more intense pressure. You are under more pressure because you've not announced
people are
it.
still
So
expecting,
everyone is still trying to wield
subject
some
to
level of
change.
exactly.
Right.
But the moment the names are out, okay, everybody
you
says,
can
okay,
do.
well, the names are out. So
Right.
if you're going to wait, then wait till the next administration.